everyone to this special event from here in Washington at Johns Hopkins SAIS, the Foreign Policy Institute. I want to welcome you all to a very important and timely event. Our question today that we're focusing on is Serbian lithium. Is this a boon, a geo-economic boon for Serbia and the region and the West? Or is it an environmental disaster for Serbia and its citizens? And few questions loom larger over Western policy towards Serbia and the region than Serbia's rich lithium deposits. And of course, few questions have larger implications for Serbian citizens than does the prospective mining of those lithium deposits. So to discuss that today, we thought it would be a good idea to bring a range of highly informed Serbian voices to you. And that's what we've done here. And we're very pleased and proud to have these five highly accomplished panelists joining us here today. And I'm going to bring them in here to the conversation, introduce them very briefly in the order in which they will speak, noting the specialty of their focus in this conversation. Of course, there'll be some overlap, but in general, we will turn first to Professor Zoran Stevanović, University of Belgrade, retired, an expert in the geological aspect and hydrological aspect of this Jadar lithium project. Welcome to you, Professor Stevanović.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me.
Very well. Then, turning to what the economic dimension of this, the proposed boon aspect of the Jadar lithium project, we have with us Aleksandar Matković, who is with the Institute of Economic Sciences in Belgrade. Welcome to you,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleksandar. Then, focusing on the legal dimension, also from the Renewables and Environmental Regulatory Institute. We're very pleased to have with us Mirko Popović. Thank you very much,
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Our pleasure to have you, Mirko. We'll be turning to you primarily on the legal dimension. Then, of course, it's widely known, there's no secret at all, that there's widespread concern in Serbia among Serbian citizens, and obviously significant protests in the past that even halted this project. And to discuss the social and societal implications, we have Bojana Novaković, who leads Marš Satrine, the movement opposed to the Jadar project. And Bojana, we're very pleased to have you with us today.
Thanks so much. Excited to share our experiences when you get to me, and excited to hear everybody. Thank you.
Great, great. We'll be coming to you as well. And then finally, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's enormous geopolitical implications to the Jadar project. This is known here in the United States, in Europe, prominent visits of leaders like German Chancellor Scholz to Belgrade, the signing of this EU memorandum of agreement on mining raw materials. So we know, of course, that this has huge implications. China looms in the background here, and to discuss all that, very pleased to have from University of Belgrade, Professor Milan Krstić. Milan, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, and great to have all five of you with us. And let me hasten to introduce as well our team here at SAIS, joining me in this effort. To my right, your left on the screen, we have our SAIS Foreign Policy Institute Program Coordinator, Red Kessler, without whom this event would not be possible. To my left, we have a student here, SAIS student Mate Sekulic, who hails from Serbia. He and SAIS, his colleague, fellow SAIS student, Kaya Buria, who is in Slovenia, just finished the semester here, and Kaya joins us from Slovenia. Hello, Kaya.
Hello, it's good to see everyone. Thank you, Professor, for the introduction.
Of course, and Mate.
Thank you very much, Professor, for the introduction. Happy to be here.
Great, and great to have you. And it was thanks to Mate and Kaya that we have developed this program and brought you these outstanding 5 speakers to join us today. And Mate and Kaya will be joining me in presenting our speakers and in posing questions to them. And let me turn to that quickly now before we begin opening with Professor Stevanović. Let me quickly add something here that about panelists that you don't see today. And some may comment on that, and we welcome, of course, all of you watching on YouTube. I want to emphasize this and emphasize that on YouTube you can also post questions in the chat. Please note that. But let me quickly say something about the panelists you don't see. You don't see a official Serbian voice on this panel. That is someone from the Serbian government to give the government's perspective, obviously strongly in favor of the Jadar project. And I need to emphasize that we made every effort to make that possible. We reached out, we wanted to have an official Serbian voice, primarily, of course, the Minister of Mining and Energy to come, or someone that she would designate, but that was not possible. And again, despite our repeated efforts, we also now belatedly, thanks to a suggestion from one of our panelists, we reached out to Rio Tinto, who declined, citing that there was not enough time, understandably, because we decided to make that outreach late. That's because the original concept here was to have Serbian voices on this, but we thought in the end, why not give Rio Tinto a chance as well to make their case? But unfortunately, they felt there was not enough time to prepare to join this event. That being said, what we will try to do here at SAIS, what we will try to do, myself, Mate, and Kaya, is we will try to play the role of a proponent. We will try to point out some of the positives about the Jadar project and pose them as questions, and at times maybe even challenges to our speakers to let them respond. So that's what we're going to try to do here today. And let me also note here, quite important, that our aim here is educational. We are not taking a position on this. This is a complex topic, and this is far from the last word on it, but we want to open this conversation, and I believe we have the individuals here who can do that. So let me begin here by turning to Professor Stevanović and to note some of the key aspects of the Jadar project. That this is unique, as you know, Professor Stevanović, that the mineral that Serbia possesses, it's not just lithium, it's apparently some so unique geological formation with elements of lithium and boron that they coined a new term for it. It's not lithium, it's jadarite. So, and Serbia possesses these rich reserves there in Western Serbia near the border with Bosnia and Herzegovina. And Professor Stevanović, this represents an enormous, here, I see here Rio Tinto states that it's a potential mineral resource of 143.5 million tons of jadarite. And this all would go, of course, to advancing the green energy transition, which is so important to decarbonize our future. And for Europe, it's so important to move in this direction. Recently was the well-known report by Mario Draghi, the Draghi report, which says Europe has to move forward made this clarion call for independence on these type of issues. Obviously, we'll get into later on the geopolitics, but from a geological standpoint, this is an incredible find that Rio Tinto discovered here about 20 years ago. And I turn here to Mate and to Kaya, also who might share some points.
I think in terms of Rio Tinto specifically, in terms of geology specifically as well, there was a study done by the Serbian Academy for Arts and Sciences, and in which Rio Tinto was also present, and they cited a mine of a similar nature. It was a coal mine in Slovenia that was also underground. And being underground, it would be similar to what is happening in Western Serbia in terms of Project Jadar. And they cited it as a safe. Obviously, different size and different politicians that were involved in that project also cited it as bad on that side. So there's a pro and against view on that side. And also, Rio Tinto obviously has been in the area since 2004, and they have claimed to have done a lot of feasibility studies looking at and ensuring that there's environmental protections. So I'm wondering what your take on that would be in terms of safety and regulations. And Kaya, of course, if you would like to add.
I can let them speak and then I'll add a subsequent question.
Great. And Professor Stevanovic, before I give you the floor, let me just add a couple other statistics here. Let me just add these, obviously well known to all of our panelists, but purportedly this Jadar discovery here, I'm quoting, ranks as one of the most significant undeveloped lithium deposits in the world, large enough to supply more than 5% of current global demand. And then Rio Tinto here, this is their prospective plans. Rio Tinto has announced plans to produce 58,000 tons of lithium carbonate and 285,000 tons of boric acid. Remember, I said you have those two elements there that are both apparently uniquely present in the Jadar deposits. And plus, Professor Stevanovic, you'll know the meaning of this, I don't, but a further 260,000 tons of sodium sulfate produced as a, quote, marketable byproduct of the chemical processing. So with that background, Professor Stevanovic, this is an exciting find for Serbia to have this. The current Minister of Mining and Energy said that this is Serbia sitting on billions here. So what do you have to say from the geological perspective? Professor Stevanovic, you have the floor.
First of all, thank you very much for calling me to take a part in this session. I think I've just accounted today, there was 16 years since I was last time the guest of the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. So thank you. It was a really pleasure to join. And I could say that you were a perfect actor of the position of the ministry and the government and the Rio Tinto as well. So congratulations. But on the other side, we here, the large group of geologists and environmentalists, we, out of all these potential advantages of such a projects, we have very much afraid of the current situation generally in mining and utilization of our national natural resources in general, which are exposed to the contamination in the many places all around the country. And in case of lithium, situation is probably will be even worse because there are many critical points that can go to the additional damage to the environment. I have prepared one short presentation, and I hope in the introduction will be good for all to see what kind of the problem we are facing. So please, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we can. Please go.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go.
So geology in Serbia is a very complex. We have a very also long mining tradition in the country. more than 100 years. Even before the Second World War, there were many concessions for our mine and ores in eastern part of the country, which are exposed to the intensive extraction of the minerals. So at the moment, we have also large coal extraction. It's about 70% of the energy is coming from such a source. In the northern part of the country, we have oil production. Now it's possession of the Gazprom Russian Federation company. And we have many environmental problems currently with the mining. Recent project being conducted by the support of the German Technical Fund. And in our country, they identify together with our expert 250 mining waste dumps. None of them is remediate and rehabilitate in our country. So this is one of the major results of the previous mining. So in case that mining will be done in I could say, some specific and a very highly sophisticated way that theoretically such mining in Jadar would be possible, but this is just a theory because of the many aspects. I will just present you that we have in that area one of the major water resource and reserves for the potable water in our country, which is equal, reserves are equal to the total water consumption at that moment in our country. Our problem with mining and geology started, I could say, after democratic movement happened in year 2000. In 2011, for the first time, there were some activities of our expert to merge our mining law and the law on geological exploration, which are, I could say, the totally different, two different things. Geology is an activity that should identify the mine possibility and reserves of the minerals, while mining should go through commercialization, exploitation, and so. Our government merged these two things in 2011 and opened, in fact, the field for mining project. And many problems happened since that time. This, one of the very problematic things that is that our National Geological Survey, which has more than 90 years of tradition, in fact, in this law got a restriction to do detailed applied research of the minerals. I imposed this question in discussion with my German colleagues when I was there, and I asked how you can imagine that your geological survey Bundes in Hanover will not be able to do detailed exploration in your country. The same, I could ask, for instance, my American colleagues from geological survey as well, how this could be. So this is one thing. The second, the problem in this is that it is merged exploration and exploitation right, giving automatic concession after verification of the reserves and after the environmental impact assessment study would be approved, that without any further tendering, the concession would be given to the company which did this exploration. Then we have another problem that mining companies became exclusive holder of the data on the mineral reserves, which means that they are, in fact, our expert cannot access this data and make a proper assessment of the feasibility and the further possibility to mine the area. And so on. So there is another, in this law, for the first time, will happen that we have expropriation of the land and properties if the government established that this is the area of the public interest. So many problems. And what this all came from, it is the sum of the law of the countries which are, in fact, open market for the mining and the private sector for the mining. For instance, coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo or Mongolia and so. I was witnessing personally of this situation. What I would want to just to show you a couple of slides before we go to the discussion. This is how it looks wonderful Caribbean Sea in our one of the mine field in the Majdanpek area, which is now exploiting by the Chinese company Zijin. This is situations before they start their operation. Some couple of months later, this Caribbean Sea disappeared simply. And where was flow out? It was flow out to the nearby river of the Pek, night by night, pumping portion by portion, went out without any, let's say, control and discussion. This is another flotation lake, which is also very heavily polluted, the downstream rivers and the natural springs as well. We did several monitoring research in the area and found that most of our natural springs became polluted from this flotation. This is one of the springs on the other side. You can see that ferrous mineral content and also manganese and arsenic is also present, and so over the maximal permitted concentration. This is one of the river downstream of the minefield of Bor, where also Zijin doing this extraction of mineral. No any life in the river, Borska Reka, which is one of the major tributary and also one of the tributary of the Timok River, which is of the transboundary character. So this is a few springs with mine water without treatment, flow out, and go downstream to the other larger rivers. This is our Ministry of Environment and Energy. This is website where you can find just the basic information on about this 250 waste dump from the mines, from the mining, but except the location and the type of the minerals there, you cannot find any further information about the remediation activities on whatever is going. This is a slide showing how many exploration fields we have which permit was issued to the sum of the company. The name of the company, 34 in total, is on the right side. And what minerals are under the exploration, you can find by the numbers. So there are plenty, and almost all our central part of the territory is covered by this exploration rights. On the northern part is Pannonian Basin, and as I said, this is the oil production area by the Gazprom from Russia. Back to the Jadar very, very briefly, and I hope we will have more time to discuss what is the sensitive in this area. I could say about the Jadarit, this is true. This is a unique mineral of the lithium, sodium, silicium, boron hydroxide. It's a new mineral found for the first time in the deep boreholes. It is done by the Rio Tinto company in 2004, but indication and the knowledge about the presence of the high content of the lithium in this area is coming from our expert, our professor Obradović in 1999, when she for the first time took the samples in the wider area and found that there is a prospect for further potential exploitation of the lithium minerals. So this is a Jadar area. In the normal conditions, this is exactly the area where the cultivated land is widely exposed. This is the farming is very intense in that area. And this is, I could say, a normal summer season when you can see a lot of greenery around and a lot of populated area. And area exactly where they plan to establish the mine and also processing technology and the others is in fact the flooding area, exposed to the floods almost every year because of the character of such a river like Jadar and Korenita, which are in this zone. And I could finish this intro, I hope will give you enough an overall picture. When you see the Machva, I indicate where the position of the mine should be. This is area we classified as a vulnerable and highly vulnerable to the pollution because aquifer system and groundwater there could be exposed to the easy contamination in case of any activities. And this map is our official national map, which been a part of our water management plan, which is issued in a 2017 strategy of the water management for the water management until the year 2034. So it means that even there is a contradiction between the formal situation with our legislation and the will of our government to do this extensive mine field in the Jadar area. And the last slide is also showing you that Machva area, which is indicated in the central part of the right map, is area where the total groundwater reserves are equal to the total actual consumption of the potable water in our country. Or it is 3 to 4 times more groundwater than currently city of Belgrade, which is capital city of the country, which is about 100 kilometers or even 80 to 100 kilometers downstream, can utilize this water, and this is also put in our national plans. So this is a second contradiction, that we have a large natural reserves of the water. There are not such a many location in our country where we can tap such a high quality water in such extent. So it's mean the contradiction, and our worries is coming from these facts. And this is result. In August, we have such a huge demonstration in the country, one of many that happened in the last couple of years, but our other colleagues will probably talk more about. Thank you for giving me time, and sorry if I jump over the proposed 10 minutes or 11 minutes.
No, that was outstanding, Professor Stevanović, and if I can call you Zoran. And let me say, I hope it will not be another 16 years before you're next on Johns Hopkins event.
Hopefully.
Okay. Well,
I will have near to 90 years, so I don't believe that.
That's okay. We could also do in addition have that in 16 years. And I think I may have neglected to identify myself for our online audience. My name is Edward P. Joseph with Johns Hopkins SAIS Foreign Policy Institute. So I want to welcome everyone to this excellent conversation. And Zoran, if I may, that was a perfect start. As I said, we here are going to try to play the role of proponents of this, of the government or Rio Tinto. So let me just quickly, before we zero in with Aleksandar Matković on the promised economic benefits, let me zero in on a couple points, and I believe my SAIS student colleagues here, Kaya and Mate, also want to push back. So a couple things. Let me say something very important that Rio Tinto, those who are unfamiliar with it, is that this is an underground mine. Okay, so this is not an open pit mine. And if you notice our photograph that we have, the introductory photograph, it shows this underground. That's number one. Number two is, yes, noting what you said, Professor Stevanović, that about the water resources there. What I read from Rio Tinto and proponents is that the processing of the lithium would take place separate, away from the region of the mine. So that's a second point. And then let me give one third point before turning to Mate and Kaya. You mentioned about the tendering process. and that this is unusual, that sort of the concession is given before all the feasibility studies and so forth. According to Rio Tinto, they have already invested 600 million euros in this project. So how could it not be? It would be very unfair that a company would invest 600 million euros and then the project would be put out to bid, and someone else who had not made all that investment would then get the project. And in addition, in terms of feasibility studies, they say, and I listened recently to a podcast interview with the Rio Tinto Serbia project director, who said that on their website they have thousands of documents about the feasibility. It's not the final feasibility study because that takes place sequentially after they apparently get the decision, but that they already have, according to them, quote, thousands of pages of documents that are on the website. So those are 3 points. Mate, please.
Yeah, I think my main point in terms of this specific geological look at the mine would be around, obviously you mentioned that there's a lot of underground water and a lot of drinking water that supplies major cities like Belgrade, for example, in the city. And obviously I think Rio Tinto, if we were to talk from their perspective, they believe that they're very involved with the local community, and they really try to communicate that they've done a lot of studies, that they're trying to do their best to accommodate the issues that people rise in a local community. And I guess across comparison with Zijin Bor in the east of Serbia, do you think this is more of a legislative issue versus could this mine function if certain legislative issues come up and that the geological community would be more inclined to support it if the regulations were followed through? Do you think that would be an issue? That would be my point.
Great, thank you. And Kaya.
Yes, thank you. And just last, I guess, question. I know a lot of the proponents say that the environmental safeguards are going to be in place, and the project also has plans for ecological restoration post-mining. So I'm just very interested to hear what you have to say on, I guess, specifically on the plans of ecological restoration that will safeguard the environment after the mining. Thank you.
Great. Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Kaya. And Zoran, so if you would, if you could address those points and questions.
Okay, so many questions, but you are a very good proponent of the project. So, but there are some other issues which are also they are putting in the practice that which they promise. In fact, what I said a couple of times in media, it is theoretically they put everything that theoretically looks possible, sounds possible. But the practice in country is very problematic, and our environmental practice and our inspection of all this mining activity, it is in a reality is not running well. For instance, on my question, how many mining inspectors we have in the country at the moment with such intensive mining in many locations, they told me 4. 4 persons for such activity. They cannot even control. Second, we not found in our media any of the real penalty or punishment of the company which made this environmental troubles to the environment. In fact, and the contamination is not follow the main principle which is put in our law formally: pollutant pays. No pollutants paying in our country at the moment. Realistical sum and for the compensation. But back to your question. First, you said this is underground mine. Yes, this is underground mine. But all process technology is going at the surface. With underground mine, we have a problem with not in such large extent with the groundwater, which are in the mine. Its amount is not so large. I agree with the findings that will be probably about 30 to 40 liters per second pumped out from the mine continuously. This is not a big amount, but what they have put in the plans that they will do this double reverse osmosis we are not believe so much in this because of the cost, very high cost of the process. Secondly, it contained the boron mineral, which are very fluent and active, and boron acid can go, it is very problematic to be treated and an easy pollutant of all environment around. So the problem is accident. They may happen in the area. So if you have a open waste dump, which will be equal to at the surface about 20 hectares. 20 hectares, for those who has no idea what is the surface immediately, this is about 30 football stadium or American baseball stadium, whatever. So this is terrain of such a large. And how high? 60-meter high. This is 16-floor building in front of you. And we have a very problematic area because of the flooding. Flooding would require that all embankment and the area will be go up for the 4 meters at least. This is what I somehow realized from these 2,000 pages of Rio Tinto documentation. But this is still not solving the problem because of the possible landslides, possible leakage of this material from the landfill, and also pollution of the nearby river Jadar, which may transfer pollutants downstream to the Drina, alluvium, and to this Machva area. Very easy. Well, problem is that our ministry even not put in their requirement to the company to do such a study because company said, oh, we will not pollute, according to our model, we will not pollute more than 6 square kilometers around. So, okay, why we have no a proper study for assessment of the and transfer of the contamination to the wider distance and to the pollution of the also transboundary river Drina and alluvium of Machva. So this is about the process, about the tendering. You said they invest 600 million. They could say whatever they want. In my calculation for the cost of the drilling alone and are totally different figure. So, okay, if they say that they maybe invested 2 billion, that will be also their data. I have no problem with this, but okay, they should approve that such a large investment is really has been invested in this project. And this is not our problem. This is a problem of our government as well, which not put a proper regulation for this project and not, in fact, impose the kind of the observation of all this investment which taking place according to the company. For me, I'm not economist, definitely. I could just say the tendering is in a normal economic world. If you invest in exploration, okay, in a tendering procedure, the complete compensation for your exploration must be given in the same amount plus the potential extra value of your previous work. But some other company could come and to take a concession for this. This is happening exactly with the Zijin. The Canadian company did exploration in the eastern Serbia. I think Freeport is the name or similar, Rakita, I don't know exactly. And they put this on the market there for probably 1 billion and a half or something. They sold out to the Chinese company. So, okay. But our government didn't play anything in this. Even we don't know if a proper tax for this business paid in our country or somewhere else, and how is paid. And the point is also the taxes from the mining are not correct. It is just the 5% of the not the profit, but of the value of the company which is getting from the selling their products. And according to the payment would start after maybe 5, maybe 10 years. However, when the company said, okay, now our 60 million investment is now come to zero. Now we could start our payment to the government. This is what we learn from the media. Maybe it's not true. I don't know. Maybe economists will explain better than me, but this is how we learn this. And the feasibility study is not ready yet. The company said it will be done later. According to our law, if it's possible like this, okay. They are doing everything according to our law, which is not good. Not good for the country, not good for the citizen. It is one open market. Some of our colleagues say we are mining colony. Serbia is a mining colony, and we don't want to be simple thing mining colony for the Western country to try to cover debt in a critical minerals. Even we cannot cover this. That will be not more. Even you mentioned 5%. Some other studies say 1.5% are our lithium reserves according to the global lithium reserves in the world. So, okay, this is for the discussion. About the water supply, what our colleague Subotic asked me, water supply will probably not be affected in that high extent at the spot because it is local water reserves, but however, not be any more potable and not usable for the local community, definitely, because it will be treated and so, but not just treated to prevent further contamination, but not at such a level to be drinkable. The point is that again, I'm back to that our regional major water source is in Machva area of the national importance, which is much more important than any critical mineral for our generation to come. And ending with Kaya's question about post-mining. Yeah, everything is beautiful in the plants. They say they will maintain for the next 30 years after 40 years of the extraction of the minerals. This will be 70 years of their, I could say, observation and monitoring and even rehabilitation. I could believe in that. As I really believe to my colleagues from the mining engineer that mines could be done in a professional way, that minerals from the ground could be extracted at the surface without a big problem. The problem started when the minerals come to the surface. This is how we see the situation. A rehabilitation of this mine after these 70 or 40 years of the exploitation could be done. I could even trust that the company could do this thing, but this is still something that will be exposed to the many geohazards, for instance, earthquake or the landslide and the other, or the flooding, and all this could in fact damage very much our environment. I hope I remember all of your concerns. Thank you, Rio Tinto.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zoran. That was great. And I hope our viewers understand, look, this is a hugely important issue. Anyone who thinks, oh, gee, all these details about water and the mine and rehabilitation of the mine, this is an enormous issue. This question of Serbia's lithium deposits. As I said at the beginning, this is driving the entire Western policy, or driving in large part towards Serbia, and has enormous implications for the citizens. So we thank you, Professor Stevanović. Of course, there are other facets to this project. And we have 4 other also highly accomplished panelists to address those. So you use this term, Zoran, you use this term, mining colony. No, I'm going to speak now in perspective of proponents of this and the government, Rio Tinto. No, Professor Stevanović, that's wrong to use that term, mining colony. Why? Because the vision is for Serbia to have a vertically integrated, they use this term, the ecosystem. So it will not just be like I heard on our radio this morning about cobalt coming from Congo by railroad to some port on the Atlantic now, so they can get it to markets in the West very quickly. No, this is not like Congo. No, there will be processing of this unique mineral, this jadarite, the lithium and the boron, the processing which is supposedly going to take place away from the mining site, and there will be battery factories there. So the processing will take place, most of which takes place now in China. China has 3/4 of the battery manufacturing capacity. So this is now going to shift into Europe. And Serbia will not just be this mining colony. No, it will be part of this vertically integrated system. Processing will take place there and manufacture. There'll be battery factories. And here in a country and a region where so many people are just leaving because they don't see a future. Okay, this is what's promised. This would add 3% to GDP, just the project itself, 3%. There will be here in terms of jobs, 1,300 jobs created in this rather depressed area of where in Western Serbia, 154 kilometers west of Belgrade. There will be 1,300 direct jobs on the mine. Then there's a multiplier effect because as those people have rising income and requirements, there will be 3 times that many jobs created in the economy wide. That's 4,500 jobs. This will turn out, Rio Tinto will pay 180 million euros in taxes per year. Total spending, 300 million euros per year on an investment, Aleksandar, on an investment of some about 2.4 billion, which Rio Tinto is going to invest in this project on top of the 600 million euros that they say they've already spent. And then if we move to this ecosystem, so that's just the mine itself here. No, okay, but if we move to the ecosystem, away from this mining colony pejorative, 21,000 high-paying jobs. These will be high-paying jobs. This is not just miners going into the mine. There are 21,000 jobs and more than 6.2 billion in foreign direct investment in Serbia. Now, how can Serbia pass all of that up? Aleksandar, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And Zoran was saying how you are a very good Rio Tinto defender. I would even say you're better than Rio Tinto. So I suppose you actually read all of this data off of Rio Tinto's website, the questions and answers, because that's where all the compound data is located.
Some there and additional research also.
Yeah. Okay, so basically I'll just do also a presentation and just give me 1 sec to do a share screen. And when I share it, please do let me know if you see it right now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, let's start off with some basic assumptions. I think the corporate ideology behind this is, of course, this is a win-win situation. This is a big developmental chance for Serbia. But the only data we have is actually sourced from Rio Tinto. It's been actually quite difficult to obtain any data up until recently when this economic impact assessment study was out. And it was interestingly out during the time when the project was banned, so in September 2023. What's interesting before I come to this study is if you take a look at, as I did in a recent text of mine, if you look at the mining investments in Serbia in the last 10 years, we've been seeing basically a 6-fold increase of mining investments. So it's not only Rio Tinto, it's Zijin and all of the others mentioned here, which are now investing already in Serbia without that being translated into higher living standards, which we are seeing across the board. So that's not happening. The main idea behind this, that it will raise living standards, it's basically very contestable. we've seen FDI increase to about 8% in Serbia without this being translated into higher living standards. And if we look at like other mining cities like Bor, we still have high unemployment rates of about 10%. And basically, this is one characteristic of mining investments. So while they do create some benefits, those benefits are not that revolutionary as it might sound. Why? Because they increase inequality. So people who work for the mine are better off than the people who don't work for the mine. And basically, regarding the jobs that you mentioned, Serbia has a deficit of manual laborers, it has a deficit of construction workers, of electricians and whatnot. And basically what happened in Bor is those jobs were actually not designated to the Serbian population, but were actually given to an import of Chinese laborers, which has been reaching about 10,000 people a year only legally. So we have this manual deficit of manual laborers problems, which is not taken into account. And also we don't know whether this will be long-term jobs, semi-permanent jobs or impermanent jobs. So, you know, it a lot depends on the quality of jobs mentioned. So that being said, the way the Balkans economy works, basically, not only Serbia, but also Croatia as well, and Bosnia and other Balkan countries, basically, in order to give out, in order to attract foreign direct investments, you know, as was the case with Rio Tinto, as was the case with lithium, we basically hand out subsidies. We have a foreign direct investment law which says we can designate a certain investment and proclaim it a project of national importance. What this category means is that basically it gives the state the right to hand out subsidies, hand out land, cover wages by the workers, and basically service the foreign direct investment so that it makes it easier for foreign direct investment to come into a country. My concern was that the same will happen with this vertically integrated lithium chain. And people, when they say, you know, this will be like a huge benefit for the country, there's also another side to it when it comes to handing out subsidies, as was actually the case with Inobat. So you mentioned the battery producers, a Slovakian company affiliated also closely to Mario Šefčovič, the EU commissioner on the Green New Deal, is basically designated to get a subsidy worth about 400 million euros. And so what that does to a country like Serbia, basically we tend to go to the IMF, tend to go to the World Bank, basically tend to go to financial bodies of various sorts in order to get credits for these subsidies. And what that does is increase our balance of payments deficit. So according to IMF projections, in about 4 years and more, Serbia's balance of payments is set to basically worsen as a consequence of the government currently driving vast construction projects and handing out subsidies to foreign companies. If we look at the data I've just showed, you know, rising foreign direct investment, basically plateauing, you know, around 8% when it comes to, you know, its contribution to the GDP is not that much as it has been, for example, in the last 10 years or previously when there was actually a need for it. But right now, the way we are servicing foreign direct investments, including lithium investments, is basically by indebting the country and making us worse off, basically. So that's just like for a start. And now to come back to the study that Rio Tinto has been working on. Well, basically, if you divide the total income by year annual income that Rio Tinto will be getting, well, then at discount prices, it turns out that the per capita benefit to the Serbian population will be about 2.6 euros. That being said, the current price of lithium is about $10,500 per kiloton of lithium carbon equivalent. That's actually half of what Rio Tinto projected. So you can actually divide all of this by half. And when I say per capita, it's basically a statistics, you know, and we love to, you know, we love numbers. We love to throw around, you know, these big numbers, especially, you know, where you're advertising a mining project. But without knowing the local economy and where the money goes, you know, talking about benefits to the wider population can be problematic. Why? Well, first of all, the funds will be controlled, of course, by the government. There will be a local development fund for Loznica, the municipality. And the thing is, the government is currently basically run by one of the largest parties in Europe, actually the number one party Europe by numbers. It's about 1 million people. It's tied, it's been facing a lot of corruption scandals. It's tied to these big projects. And by giving out subsidies to foreign companies in exchange for employment, often of party-affiliated people, there is actually quite a tendency between foreign direct investment and the strengthening of an authoritarian regime. And it's not for nothing that basically there was a recent high wave of violence in August in Serbia and the Balkans, because the government tried to defend the project by basically threatening people and whatnot. So there's also this extra economic, so to speak, although I wouldn't use the term, but there's actually a quite interesting connection between these projects. So to come back basically to the numbers, and somebody, I think Zoran was mentioning also the taxes. So Rio Tinto will be seeing profits from year 11 of the project, right? And so it will be about 11.4 billion euros. But it will be paying taxes only basically 12 out of 40 years due to different regulations. And in the first 5 years, it will not be paying any of the taxes mentioned. So that kind of like lowers its benefit basically quite a lot. And the infrastructure will be built by Serbia. So this includes roads, gas pipes, railways, and basically also one other characteristic of mining investments is once the mine is done after these 40 years, which is quite a short period of time span, for the mine, basically a lot of this infrastructure just loses its meaning. So why would you need a highway to Gornje Nedeljice, a village located basically far away from Belgrade, you know? And if you leave the railroad, leave like road, the gas pipes and whatnot, so basically they will become stranded investments after the mine leaves, you know? And mind you, this is a highly developed agricultural region. I think somewhere you mentioned basically it's a destitute, devastated place. There's nothing happening. It's not true exactly. It's been basically designated as a highly productive agricultural area. I think about 60 million euros basically annually. So there is sort of an ecosystem, especially when we're using the term ecosystem, basically this already developed ecosystem in that area. That basically located, about 22 villages are located there. They comprise 22 villages. And I think once we factor that in, then it comes to shift the balance of what you want to get with this investment. So do you want to destroy an agricultural region? And also mind you that this is one of the rare regions of Earth. I personally don't know any other, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know any other region, like a densely populated region, where a mine is located in this way and constructed in this way. So if we're talking about economics, well, there's already an existing population of people that's engaged in, in economic activity. Basically, it's also of importance to the state as well, because not all of these products remain basically in this area. They also trade them with other regions as well. So if you want to impact this region, you will have also an economic impact of other region. When we're talking about this multiplier effect, you mentioned like the jobs increases basically. Well, you will also have job decreases, in other sectors. So it can function basically both ways. And so what I wanted to get more when it comes to this, also we don't have something that's called an investment screening mechanism. Basically, once this investment comes into the country, and that's coming back to what I've said regarding the data, it's quite hard to obtain any data because Rio Tinto is basically the sole source of this, apart from some very aggregate statistics. Well, basically, if we would have had an investment screening mechanism just like the US had, just like the EU had, just like China had, we could actually have a more developed debate on this. And what happened in reality was that we had a company which was investing for 20 years in Serbia. It was present basically since the early 2000s, which earlier context coming, stretching all the way back to the 90s during the times of Milosevic. Well, basically, be having this company, which now initiated this huge project, with us only debating it after the fact. It's as if you are building a house and then you kind of construct it a little bit, and then you go to the architect and then ask him, should I construct a house? I think basically, we would have had the other way around if we had had an investment screening mechanism, which would also protect us from the negative effects of a company, of a project, should things go wrong. Also to come back to some data that's basically also, sorry for me skipping some slides, regarding the lithium demand. So, for the European Union, this mine is basically not only for the EU, but this mine is basically justified on two grounds. One, first, is that it will be an answer to a growing lithium demand, basically, as the green transition moves forward. So that's quite obvious. The second thing is that it will help Europe decouple from China. So let me start from China first, because I know it's a hot topic and everybody wants to know about it. So basically, a Chinese state company called Chinalco is the main shareholder of Rio Tinto at 11%. It used to be 14%, basically in 2008, once it bought shares in Rio Tinto. And it's quite interesting. While Chinalco is designated in Rio Tinto for African operations, basically, according to the agreement with Rio Tinto, they can actually suggest a new director if they want to buy up more shares and increase their share to about 15%. So this gives you Chinese influence almost directly, So if the European Union wanted to counter China, or not going into the reasons why, well, then you're not doing it, And also, I'm not saying this just because of the percentage of shareholder by Chinalco. I'm also saying this because on the ground in Serbia, Rio Tinto has been collaborating with Zijin, a Chinese also state-owned company, on exploring different materials in eastern Serbia. And also, according to new research, which I can share with you later on, done by some of my journalist friends, basically, Chinese companies have also been getting EU funds. So we're basically not decoupling from China, at least not in the same way that it was expected. Now, to come back to the first point I mentioned, the lithium demand. It's quite interesting. I was at the panel with Majdorin Zbai, hope I'm not mispronouncing it. She was like, she works at the European Commission for monitoring the Critical Raw Materials Act, basically. And we were together on a panel with her explaining that while they were calculating lithium demand, they did not go even into the details when it comes to, whether we need a new cell phone every year, whether it's okay for rich people to own 5 cars. So they didn't go into these calculations. Even at that time, they did not basically question the industrial demand for these products. If they had questioned the industrial demand, it would have basically sufficed that perhaps we don't need a new mine because the demand will be lower. And this is, I think, a crucial point. Why? Because the current demand is basically, I've contacted Rio Tinto, I've contacted the Ergo Group, which done the calculations. I've contacted even members of the European Parliament, which, were involved in these things. And basically, in a lot of these calculations, people are either extrapolating historical trends or focusing on high-end premium vehicles in Germany and other areas, and calculating the uptake of EV vehicles, and thereby from that theoretically calculating the lithium demand. But as you all know, we have currently a crisis in the German auto industry. We have Volkswagen closing down factories. We have basically Northvolt battery producers basically going bankrupt. Not to mention extra economic factors like war in Ukraine and whatnot. Basically, quite a shaky time. These calculations can go wrong. They basically, if you look at the numbers I mentioned in the beginning, the price of lithium is 50% below, what was calculated, in the future trends, which was used by Rio Tinto to calculate the economic benefits to Serbia. And, they didn't even do a scenario analysis. All of these calculations are not, for one low profitable scenario, high profitable, or mid profitable scenario. They're just calculations, I think, that have been premised on making a maximum impact, basically, which is good PR, but it's not reality. I think what we are getting often by Rio Tinto are PR figures, which are presumed to make a maximum impact. But in reality, mining is a hyper-cyclical industry. And if you look at any country like South Africa, Congo, or whatever, basically the GDP tends to go up and down along with mining products. And according to UN studies done recently, those countries which cling on to a single material like lithium basically end up being overly exposed to the highly volatile nature of mining. And perhaps I can also end up with that. Basically, I think this project, the way it's set up now, especially with lithium being, in Serbia in a rock formation, which you have to dig out, which means investments in machinery, which can break down, then you need to repair them. And, those are big investments which can actually sink down as time goes by. And towards the end of the project, in this 40-year-old lifespan of the project, basically profitability will be going down as well, making the mine highly exposed to external shocks, to external crises. And I'm not mentioning all of the extra economic, so to speak, although I hate to use the term, factors, because this is the reality in which we live, and because this will be the reality which can affect the mind as well. And, if anyone is speaking about whether or not this is a big developmental chance, well, we can also always ask, why didn't Rwanda, Congo, Chile, and whatnot develop to the stage, of like core countries based on a single mine? Well, because mines don't have that effect. So neither will they have that effect in Serbia. And what I'm basically, my entire shtick with this, what I'm basically saying is this will basically create a new division of Europe. And then I can go to these slides. If we look at our resource productivity, we have been increasing the extraction of raw materials in Serbia. It's been going up to 22%. We have been seeing a 150% increase in mining waste. 18% of this is hazardous waste, only from 2022 to 2023. And while our resource productivity, which is a key indicator for the green transition, which means basically how many kilos of material you use to achieve a certain percentage of GDP measured in euros, basically it's fallen from 41 to 37.2 euros per kilogram, followed by the 10% basically in the last 5 years as mining investments went up. So if I look at and put all of this together, the more mines we have, the more extraction we have, the less productive we are. And basically, there's more inequality. While the benefits, I'm not saying there will not be any. I'm just saying they will be highly localized and also very much connected to the state, run by an authoritarian regime. This is also not something I made up. This is also being discussed in the European Parliament. And basically, they are quite very well conscious that they have been signing, strategic partnership with military regime in Rwanda, and the Serbian mine, because of the completely volatile nature of the current Serbian politics, is quite a hot topic in the European Parliament and the European Commission, precisely because of these state and FDI connections. So all in all, there won't be like zero benefits. There will be, but they will not be revolutionary as such. And I think basically also to finish up, the EU, and other countries can, of course, do without another lithium mine, should they calculate the demand differently. And if they do, they will actually help in lowering human rights abuses in the Balkans and basically, stop fueling the politically sensitive situation. That is quite an important point to have in mind. And also, basically, none of this is, none of these countries, or very rarely, are they discussing public investments during the green transition, investments into public infrastructure, which is falling apart in Germany and to an extent in France. And I think if the green transition was calculated differently, then, there would have be no need for a mine, while probably the living standards in the core countries would be even better. So that's basically perspective from where I'm coming, and thank you all for listening.
Alexander, thank you very much. Mindful of the time remaining and our three panelists, Alexander, we won't ask you any questions here. I'm just going to quickly summarize that as Zoran did. Initially, these are all cogent points that you say this foreign direct investment relies on subsidies, which will increase the Serbian deficit, and you say is problematic in terms of the ruling party corruption and employment. That the in fact the price of lithium has gone down, so these a lot of these figures are highly speculative, and you point out that some of the infrastructure benefits may be illusory. And another point that you made, which is quite important, rather than a depressed region, you say that this is actually a productive agricultural region. So it's not that this is some type of area that doesn't have any economic prospects. It does have them, and together with the points provided by Professor Stevanović, you see a threat to an existing actual ecosystem. So that's my brief summary. So thank you very much, Aleksandar. And now we'll turn to focus on the legal regime here. And again, I'm turning to our expert here, Mirko Popović of the Renewables and Environmental Regulatory Institute. What's not to like about the regulatory environment here? I'm going to quote. This is, I believe this is a quote. It may not be exact, but I heard a Rio Tinto spokesperson state just last month, I believe this to be a quote, just don't hold me to this, that Rio Tinto will apply European standards 100%. So this is not the case that people think where, oh, we will, forget about the lithium that exists in Germany and where Germans don't want to mine it because of all the associated environmental hazards. We'll mine it in Serbia because it's outside the EU and we don't have to worry about all those EU regulations. Not so, not so. Rio Tinto will apply European standards 100%. And besides that, Mirko, this is operating under Serbian legal framework. In fact, the only reason the project has been reinstated following the protests in December 2021, which were, as Rio Tinto has stated itself, pointed out that this was prior to an election. This wasn't anything to do with Rio Tinto. These were Serbian institutions that were functioning on their own. And in July of this year, the Constitutional Court reinstated the prior agreement. So this was just the Serbian legal framework turning. That's what's happening here. And Rio Tinto commits to what it says is radical transparency about that. So unless Mate and Kaya have additional points here, Mirko, what's the problem with the legal framework for this project?
Nothing to add. I think everything covered. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Edward, and you give me a very good introduction to start. So let's start with that statement. I don't believe that I read that statement that Rio Tinto will apply European standard 100%. I would never said something like that if I were any representative of any company in Serbia, purely because it is not possible. Not only because Serbia is not a member of the European Union, but because of Serbian environmental standards. In pure formal way, in the means of transposition of European environmental standards, Serbia is not even close to European standards in terms of transposition. In terms of application of these standards, or application of standards which are already transposed, Serbia is far, far away from any possibility of even thinking about being aligned with European standards in several decades from now on. And when I'm saying that based on the analysis that particularly RERI performed for 7 years, particularly related to environmental impact assessment standards in Serbia, inspection surveillance standards, strength and effectiveness of judiciary in protecting the environment. When we speak and we analyze or discuss what may happen if some project is implemented, because we need to be clear. Rio Tinto project is not approved in Serbia. This project is not anyhow approved. So it might happen that this project is not approved at all. If, of course, small chance or there is almost no possibility that the Ministry of Environment will have enough strength to reject environmental impact assessment study when the time is come. But if it imagine that it happened, then the project is not approved and the project may not happen. It doesn't matter how much they invest. So project is not approved yet, but we still speak about environmental standards. Yes, then from the point of view of RERI, we analyze institutional framework, we analyze procedures of environmental impact assessment and its application. We also compare European standards with the standards in Serbia. So to repeat once again, saying that European standards will be applied 100% is a irresponsible statement because it is not possible. Also, it is highly responsible what was argued by the president of Serbia, for example, that European Union or Germany or even German Greens will come here and guarantee application of standards. These are fairy tales because it also is not formally possible. Despite the relations between Serbia and European Union, despite the potentials of diplomatic or other influence between countries which are powerful and those who are less powerful, there is no possibility for any agency from European Union or Germany to come to Serbia and to monitor or provide any kind of surveillance over the implementation of the project. So only Serbian laws will be applied. How Serbian laws are applied, as I'm saying, we learn from previous experience and from existing experience with Rio Tinto. Just give me opportunity to present few very recent experience of rare cases with the environmental impact assessment procedure. It is not related with Rio Tinto directly, but it is related with the Ministry of Environment. The case one is Fuset factory in city of Valjevo. It is not Chinese company, it is German company. It doesn't matter which one. But what's happened? We have a procedure in the middle of procedure for approval of environmental impact assessment study. We find out that the object that is subject of environmental impact assessment study is already constructed. In that case, there is no sense to have procedural environmental impact assessment study anymore, because project is constructed obviously illegally, and there is no sense to conduct procedure anymore. And what you and your audience think that happened? Did the ministry stop the procedure? No, they continue with procedure and issue approval of environmental impact assessment study, which is preventive measure. It needs to be done before any approval. If it is not, if environmental impact assessment study is not performed before development consent procedure or approval of the project, it makes no sense. But ministry still approved this environmental impact assessment study for the object which is already constructed, and we go on. Another example is recent. We are speaking about something which happened very recently. It is the demolition of the old bridge over Sava and construction of new bridge. Again, the Ministry of Environmental Protection is involved. So what they did, once the environmental impact assessment study is approved, the investor has 2 years to start with the project. According to Serbian law, when the deadline is exceeded, there is no other possibility but to submit new request and to perform new procedure for the new study. This is the only possible way how to extend the validity of environmental impact assessment study. However, in completely legal procedure, the official, actually the state secretary in the Ministry of Environment, issued a document. He signed the document. Maybe he was not prepared this document, but anyhow, he signed the document saying to the investor, which is the city of Belgrade, that the environmental impact assessment study is extended. Just like that. No procedure, it is extended. Moreover, it is said that in this problematic study, the demolition of the bridge is already covered, so they don't need new environmental impact assessment study. However, if you just purely read the environmental impact assessment study, you find that demolition of bridge is not part of that study at all. No more examples. I think I believe it is enough, although I may continue with examples for hours, like this. So, what is the problem with so? Do you feel that examples I presented you presents the best European standards? I believe not. And what is the problem? Because the generator of this instability of environmental standards are not investors. It is the government, it is the Ministry of Environment, and specifically Department for Environmental Impact Assessment Study in the ministry. So these entities and these people are generator of instability, of insecurity, and they are those who are not capable to guarantee implementation of any standards in environment in Serbia. Imagine how they would be capable to guarantee standards for such a huge project with such significant potential risk. Now I will present my next part of presentation. We have 3 parts. I will focus on the dialogue, but from the institutional structure, because as you present, Reri is more focused on the institutional and legal issues. So I will not speak about the social atmosphere. I will speak about the institutional, procedural conditions for dialogue on development of such important project. The second issue, I will speak about the problem of environmental impact assessment procedure and splitting of the project. And the first part actually was this example. So, institutional dialogue.
Mirko, just let me jump in quickly. Just please be mindful of the time we have.
Yes,
this is already extremely helpful, what you said, and cogent, and no doubt what you have to say, but just be mindful we still have 2 speakers following you, please.
I will, don't worry. So,
thank you.
Institutional dialogue. Do we have conditions for institutional, policy-based dialogue about this project? I would say no. Why it is not? Because Serbia has opportunity to provide wide public discussion about this project within development of National Development Plan, which is the major developmental document of the Republic of Serbia. But the responsible authorities did not adopt this document in accordance with the law and in accordance with the deadlines. So they missed the opportunity to discuss with society about key developmental issues. The second one is a strategy for management of mineral and geological resources. It is the document that guides mining and geological research and exploitation of mineral resources. But Serbia has no strategy, and strategy was not adopted in accordance with the law and in accordance with deadlines. Just to add that Serbia also has no national spatial plan, because the one that now we still use exceeded 4 years ago. This is about institutional frame, about this project splitting, because this is the major issue of concern for us, having in mind that Rio Tinto, with the heavy support of the Ministry of Environment, tried to split the project, as far as I count, in 5 parts. If you ask Rio Tinto or if you ask Ministry of Environmental Protection, we are not speaking about project of exploitation of Jadarit mineral, but we are speaking about the project of development of mine and underground exploitation, project of processing the ore in the separate facility, project of disposal of industrial waste, infrastructure and transportation projects, and water supply. 5, as far as I count. From our point of view, we speak about the one project. Now I will explain why it is one project, and then I will finish. So the ministry said in their response to our comments to scoping request for environmental impact assessment study, they said, you know, the underground mine and processing facility and disposal of waste, it is not the same project because underground mine can function by itself. Let's, for the moment, let's agree that it is possible. But let me ask you, whether it's possible that waste disposal site and processing facility function without mine? I don't think it's possible. Or even whether this transportation facility infrastructure is individual project, and is it possible that it function without other facilities that will be constructed or building? No, it is not, because no one would build roads, railways, or anything, gas corridors, or anything else without the mine. So it is basically, it is not possible to observe this project like it. But the benefit for Rio Tinto, if the project is split, is in that they have open road to obtain approval for exploitation field. Then when their study for just for one part of project is approved, they can start to work on underground mine. They can present less environmental impacts than impacts of the whole project because of cumulative impact assessment and impact assessment of integrated project. These are not the same. So basically they may start, and then when they start, it is much more difficult to counter them or to face them with environmental standards because they are already here. They start with the project, and then it will be much more easy. For the purpose of having in mind that we are short in time, I will finish here, and if there is any question, I will be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mirko. And unless we have burning questions from either Kaya or Mate, Mirko, for the moment, we'll leave it there, just not because we don't have additional things to discuss about this, the legal framework, but in consideration of time and the two speakers. And now we turn to this enormous question that we're all aware of, is the societal impact, these protests, and the social impact of the Jadar project, and the fact that it's aroused such intense feelings among a spectrum of Serbian citizens. And we have to mention political figures as well. And here, if I can say that the pressure is on me now here before I reintroduce Bojana Novaković, the coordinator from Marsh Sadrina, because those in here watching in the United States may not know this, but Bojana is an actress of considerable renown. So she will be able to judge my thespian abilities here. And let me say here in all seriousness that neither I nor Mate or Kaya are really in a position to speak either for the Serbian government or for Rio Tinto. And I have to call all of our viewers' attention and say you should go to the Rio Tinto website, riotintoserbia.com, and see how Rio Tinto, in its own words, explains the virtues and attributes of this project. And with that, Bojana, I'm going to turn to you and adopting, however imperfectly, my role here in acting this, I'm going to say to you, you know, it's not the Serbian citizens, they're these protesters who are the victims. We at Rio Tinto, we are the victims. We are the victims of disinformation and emotion. Here, what we want is a fact-based, science-based dialogue. That's what we want. And instead, we're being drowned out. That rational, fact-based dialogue is being drowned out by a lot of disinformation.
Yeah, if you want a fact-based dialogue, you're going to have to listen to scientists that aren't just on your payroll. And you're going to have to listen to the highest renowned scientists in Serbia.
One second. Let me just finish my...
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I just thought you were Rio Tinto.
That's all right. But I have to, before you say I don't get the part, at least let me finish my audition.
I'm testing you.
Then you can say
this is improvisation.
Okay, so just let me quickly say these points. So so Rio Tinto says that they and we are committed to radical transparency, and that over the past, this is coming from a recent podcast I listened to of the Serbia director. I believe these data are right. Past 14 months, we've held 160 sessions where people are turning up, where we are having a dialogue with us. We're speaking to the community in Loznica, the people who are affected. And we are committed to getting public acceptance. And it's not just these economic benefits. We're also committed to respecting the cultural heritage there. So it's environmental sensitivities that we're aware of. You can look on our website, these thousands of documents. And so we're committed to this, to earning the public acceptance, and that's all we ask for is a fact-based dialogue. Bojana, what's wrong with that?
This is a really interesting take that you've just adapted, because it's actually very, very succinct with the way that Vučić and his cronies sort of function in the media, which is that they play the victim, and it's kind of an age-old where the perpetrator of the crime plays the victim and turns the victim into the perpetrator of the crime. And Rio Tinto has just started on this since probably the beginning of this year, exactly this tactic, where they're the victims, they're the humanitarian organizations that have come to save the world. Every single scientist not on their payroll who criticizes the project is all of a sudden illegitimate, even though for decades before that, including people like Zoran, these scientists have been revered by even the Serbian government. Some of these scientists work for institutions, public institutions. So it is a really interesting tactic. I'm absolutely sure that they spent a big sum of that 100 million that they spent on consultations, figuring out this exact plan. And while we're on the topic of transparency, it would be great to know what this 100 million euros was spent on, who was consulted, what types of consultations took place. You mentioned that the company invested 600 million euros in the project so far. What you didn't mention, and maybe you don't know this, is that over 300 million of that has been invested since the project's cancellation. Sorry, 200 million since the project cancellation and around about 100 million since 2019. So if you want the exact figures, I can send them. If anyone has questions after this, I'm happy to send that stuff. I don't really want to talk about money because Sasha did such a great job of that. These sessions that the company, this radical transparency is interesting because I've never met with the company. Our group has never met with the company. And all that we hear in public is that we refuse to meet with the company. We don't. We just want to meet with the company on some mutual terms. And one of those terms for us is that lawyers be present and that meetings be recorded. And that has been refused. And I don't know why, if the company is so transparent. So I'm so happy to sit down with Chad Blewett. I'm happy to sit down with his lawyers. Our entire team is, but we believe that the Serbian public deserves to be present, or rather be witness to that conversation. So, and in terms of speaking to the community, well, I'm just going to take this back because I've got my little 7 minutes and I'm going to use them because had a lot of facts. So let's just take 1 minute to watch a lovely video about how big this community is. Can you see this?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. We got it.
Vidiš li komšije i akademike? Svi pustili su korake u gradovima, selima. Neće da služe zlim delima nad zelenim predelima. I ti si potreban. I na ulici, i na frontu, da zaustavimo sramotu, da udarimo kontru. Ko nekad na Drinu taj marš nas zove, da zauzmemo stav, da pobedi razum zdrav, da Jadar ne ode u zaborav. Taj marš nas zove da budemo besni, ekološki svesni, da branimo biodiverzitet, dostojanstvo i suverenitet. Taj marš nas zove.
So I'm going to stop sharing. One of the questions that you actually asked me to discuss was sort of the breadth of this movement. And, you know, when we talk about the community, we have the local community, we have the national community, and we also have an international community. And when Rio Tinto says that they've made contact with 3,000 people, we don't know who they are, and neither do the locals. Maybe they've made contact with 3,000 people, and maybe a lot of those people have said, no, we don't want to talk to you, or said, yeah, we'll talk to you, we hate the mine. But there's no specificity around this contact. The people who live in Nedeljice, where this mine is supposed to be apparently, you know, constructed, don't want this mine. And I think it's really interesting. Alex mentioned it, you know, this depressed area. I love this dialogue that you've been constructing because this is exactly how the company and colonizers want to present certain areas that they need to colonize, whether they need to colonize them with a mine or a factory or technology or whatever it is. It's much easier to present them in that way and not as 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, let alone 20,000 people who live in a unique relationship with the biodiversity, with forests, with agriculture. They produce food for themselves and for others and have relationships with people outside of this area now that the company wants to come and ruin everything, and have now, in conjunction with scientists and activists and lawyers and citizens and people of high education and people of no university education, formed a movement, a national movement that cannot be stopped without a leader, without a leading group, and without Russian or Western-backed funding. You know, and the only way that these entities, these corporate entities and government entities that are pro-mining can attack what we do is by creating conspiracy theories, is by attacking our brain, is by saying I'm a dumb actress or Zoran is an illegitimate conspiracy theorist scientist, or by sending, and Aleksandar was too modest to say this, death threats to him. I'm not saying that they sent them, but people did send death threats to him. Is by criminalizing our activists, is by putting Ivan Bjelic, who was one of the organizers from our team for the protest on the 10th of August, in prison again and again. And so this, I guess the social aspects are very vast. I mean, we had this discussion when we talked. They're really vast. When you say, when you address sort of social aspects, it's not just about movement building and social revolt. It's also about public education and local and international collaboration, but it's also about understanding the political instability within Serbia, company politics, social warfare, psychological warfare towards the local communities, infiltrating communities by making friends and then placing expropriation threats. And Rio Tinto unfortunately shot themselves in the foot because they have a pamphlet for sale of the homes where they actually mention expropriation as a last resort. And as Mirko said, they don't have a single license. So why are they even mentioning expropriation when they don't even know if they'll be permitted to dig? The social part of the movement also has media and social media elements. What are the difficulties there? We're in a media blackout in Serbia. We don't have the news. We don't have national frequencies. So we have to use really clever ways of communicating with people, flyering, leafleting, door knocking. There's geopolitical pressure from the EU, the UK, Australia, the US, Germany. There's social engineering through EU tax-funded research, and universities are part of this. And again, this goes towards, and I hope that I'm not going to take Milan's sort of theme, but you know, the EU has been kind of not doing very well financially for a very long time, and it just seems like there's a bunch of laws now that are being made in order to sort of legalize more mining at the expense of actually looking at solutions for the climate crisis. So somehow mining has been presented as this solution. And really the only people that are happy with, say, the Critical Raw Materials Act, because I know about that one, the weapons manufacturers, mining companies, and, you know, the neoliberal kind of factions of certain parties, and then, of course, the right parties. But the extreme right and the very liberal left are not happy with this law at all, because it doesn't take into account solutions to problems that they believe, you know, exist and should be solved. So, I mean, the social elements also include legal changes, legal procedure, and I'll finish on this stuff: the criminalization of land defenders and the surveillance on activists, local police pressure, and the public. This has been such a huge problem, and I think this culminates, or rather, this is the culmination of the government and the company and the EU not knowing what to do when people practice the unequivocal human right to say no. When we say you don't have our right to engage, you don't have our right, you don't have our consent from the local community, you don't have consent from the Serbian people. We don't want to negotiate, we don't want to mine. We don't care if you're the Mother Teresa of mining or you're a corrupt company. A mine is a mine is a mine. And this agricultural epicenter with 2 rivers and underground waters and a unique relationship between people and nature should not be sacrificed so that the European Union can save its private single-use car market, which is what they say it's for. But don't forget there are borats here. And so boron is not for electric cars. Boron might be used in solar panels, but really and exclusively right now, you know, weapons manufacturers and the military industrial complex really needs boron. I mean, this is what Rio Tinto was there to look at. We never talk about it. What's it there for? And this right to say no is such an important thing for us to remember. And I think what we're seeing in this movement is the fact that people have stood up and said, we know our rights. We know our constitutional rights. You can't do this. And it's kind of raised more and more and more awareness among Serbian people and also among European activists around what our rights are as humans, what our right to a clean environment means. And people are angry and they're rising. And you asked me a lot of questions, but I actually have a question for you. So you asked me, how do you and others opposed to the project process the fact that Serbian lithium is such a priority for the US and the EU? Now, I and our group have sent several Freedom of Information requests to the State Department to ask about their involvement with this project. We have received no response. We have connected with people from the State Department. We have no idea why the US is so interested in this project, and I would love for anybody to answer me about that. Why is the US so interested in this tiny little project in Serbia?
Okay, Bojana, I will answer that in a second. Let me quickly first thank you for that very clear exposition of the movement. Did you want to contextualize for our English-speaking audience anything about the video where the woman is saying, we're here to defend our dignity, to defend our biodiversity? Did you want to just say anything about the video?
Oh, I just wanted to show the video really for the images so that you can see the context of how many people are actually rising. And I guess this video was actually made in 2021 when the expropriation law was being proposed. There was a very specific expropriation law, which would have been even worse than the one that we have now. And what we realized was that every single village in Serbia would be under threat, whether from a technological project or a mine or a factory, whatever it is. I won't go into the law now, but what an incredible thing happened, and it happened again this year, is that in the city, tens of thousands of people rose, but also across the country in rural areas, people rose. So at that time, it was 100,000 people all over the country. And this year, it was 100,000 people in Belgrade and people across 50 cities in Serbia rising against this project. And our movement, for better or worse, has united people of different faiths, very different ideologies, varying ideologies. And this is a big thing in Serbia. We always say, we know how to fight between each other better than we fight an enemy. And so like the fact that the Serbian people have agreed on just the fact that we don't want more mining, and definitely no more mining, like no new mining of lithium until we solve the other problems that are here in terms of extractivism, is an amazing thing. Again, something that the government doesn't know what to do with. It's also united people across the political spectrum, and of course across the class spectrum. So in and of itself, it's an incredibly politically dangerous and agitating moment for the ruling elite, I guess. I mean, I don't really think they're elite, because to me, elite means that you have a brain, but they have a lot of money and they've got a lot of connections with criminals. So this idea for this video is very much, to sort of bond all of those different ideologies, different political spheres in something that that ultimately our movement, Marš za Drine, comes from an anti-fascist sort of song and chant that the partisans, I don't need to go into Serbian history, but it's very linked to anti-fascist history. And so, there's a bit of healthy patriotism, and then there's also that element, and the element of sovereignty, nature, and protecting anything that's green and sacred, not just to Serbian people, but to humans and animals and all living beings.
Great. And I would underscore that as someone who's worked in the region on the ground for some dozen years and still travels to the region frequently and follows developments there, Bojana, that to underscore exactly as you said how remarkable the movement is. This is a region that, for various explanations that we can discuss, it's not like France, let's say, where the farmers are marching at any infringement on their rights, and you have French farmers or someone else in France going on strike, the air traffic control shutting things down. That doesn't happen in former Yugoslavia, and it's unusual. And the way you describe this movement, and that's what it is, a movement, as you said, across political spectrum and across class, which I didn't actually appreciate, and without a leader, without some kind of leader or political party, political figure leading this, it is absolutely remarkable. And the fact that it has had a durability, that it was previously there, it had the impact of closing down the project for some time back in 2021, 2022, and that it's now resurfaced again as the project has revived. This is quite significant. To answer your question, it's actually perfect. We're going to come in a second to Professor Krstić, and this is exactly in his bailiwick, the geopolitical. But you've asked me, and as an American, I can give you an answer, and I'm going to actually do it with a quote and ask for your reaction. I think there are two drivers for the United States. I don't think the United States sees this as some small project. As we discussed at the beginning, the deposits are significant of lithium, and this is considered in the context, particularly with the geopolitical competition with China. This is considered quite significant to have these assets go to the West. And let's remember, Rio Tinto is a British Australian company. It's not an American. And I'm even told I don't know this, but maybe even Chinese investment in it, but it's not an American enterprise.
I mean, there's a ton of American investment in it too, not as much as the Chinese, but there is.
I think no doubt you're probably correct, but it's not as if this is there's some oil company that's immediately behind us. I think the U.S. interest is the geopolitical one, and it has that two facets. It's bringing the lithium to the West and ensuring that it doesn't go to China. And we'll come to Professor Krstić in a second about that. So that's the two sides of that. And then there's a third facet, which I'm coming to perfectly. Bojana, your question was ideally timed because I'm going to actually read a quote to you and get your reaction. It's about the belief in the United States, this is clearly under the Biden administration, that and one presumes also with the Trump administration, given the experience of the first Trump administration, that this type of economic arrangement and the investment, this $2.4 billion of Western investment that will come, this will move Serbia into the West, away from Russia, away from China. So this is a third. In addition to the lithium itself, there's this regional. This is going to bring Serbia over. This is so the theory goes here, and there's also another commodity that's very important here. We don't want to take time discussing, but there's a Serbian ammunition that goes to Ukraine, and so you have ammunition and you have lithium, and these are two driving components along with Western investment that under the belief that this is not as Aleksandar Matković said, where this is supporting autocracy. They don't see it like that. No. The theory is no. This is bringing. Some of us would say the Vučić regime, but the Serbia government and Serbia. This is bringing Serbia to the West. And now let me read this quote that will emphasize this and get your reaction, please. And my thanks to Kaya for locating this. So I'm going to read this to you. So during the debate, democratic resilience, rule of law, and economic security, a review of policy options for the Western Balkans. So this was some conference
in New York.
Yes. Here was U.S. Ambassador Christopher Hill quoted. So U.S. Ambassador Christopher Hill said there is, quote, according to this article, quote, no doubt that Serbia is moving toward the West. But he also noted that in the protests against lithium mining in the Jadar Valley, he sees, a quote, a fight against that path. So he sees that the lithium would bring it into the West, and the protests are an obstacle to going there. Hill stated, this is the part, Boyan, I would like your reaction to. Hill stated that among those protesting against lithium mining, quote, there are many who support Russia, adding that he's aware that public opinion polls show Serbian sympathies for Russia and frustration with the West. So how do you react to that? He says, among those protesting, there are many who support Russia. So is that
I mean, look, I said this before. I mean, this is just a talking point that the US, any faction of US, politicians use when they don't know how to define something that they disagree with, and they don't know how to define something that seems to be taking, that seems to, they're trying to delegitimize a genuine people-led movement, and it's kind of, I think even responding to it feels like I'm legitimizing his quote. He's not the only person to say it, but as someone at the center of organizing this movement, I can safely say this is not a Russia-backed movement. I mean, we have no money from anyone. It's very hard to be funded for a movement against lithium mining from Europe, from the US, from anybody. And when we're talking about these, these kind of things, these are just really very, very succinct Western talking points. At the same time, you have Vučić, who says that we're funded by the West. So these guys really do need to sit down and have a chat about what their propaganda is going to be, because they're contradicting each other and making fools of themselves. And I guess as a segue to a little bit of your answer into Milan, because I really wanted to address the Chinese element of it, Sasha, I looked at the Bloomberg rundown of the shareholders before we came here, and actually it's 14.3% with Chinalco. Rather, they're registered in Singapore, but then the Chinese government itself has 0.86% ownership of Rio Tinto. So actually together they have over 15%. And, you know, I've really, even just as a human being, had enough of this corporate yellow peril that's going on between the West and China, and this idea that, you know, Chinese investment is terrible when there is absolutely no protections in the Critical Raw Materials Act that the EU passed, that companies that get strategic status can't sell their raw materials to China, to North Korea, to anybody. The law doesn't have any of these protections. In fact, they can even sell their concessions to anybody. So these ideas that China is this dangerous, you know, power that we need to overcome, etc. This is just, you know, it's just using corporate racism to scare people in order to justify more mining and pillaging and business as usual and, you know, profit as usual. And I guess I don't want to go too much into it because I know Milan will talk more about it. So I really just wanted to address the propaganda of that. And I think we're a perfect microcosm, particularly because we are a little bit East meets West, and Vučić does business with everybody, you know, and no one ever complained about Nice buying up half of Serbia and Xi buying up the other half, but now they're complaining about China and all of us, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there. I think I've answered all the questions and added some other elements. So thanks for letting me speak, and I've had a really great time listening to everybody too and relearning some of the things I'd forgotten.
Great. Buena, and we thank you for your contribution here to this very rich conversation. Obviously, we're going to go over a few minutes here as we turn to our last speaker here, Professor Milan Krstić of the University of Belgrade and the Center for Social Dialogue and Regional Initiatives. And Milan, great to see you again. It was great to host you and your students here at SAIS in the same building last year. And great to see you again. Hope to see you all here again. And we understand your students are there in Belgrade at the university also watching this important event. So we appreciate all that. And Bojana has set us up perfectly for your contribution here on the geopolitical side. You know, she says, you know, who cares? What this is all much ado about nothing, this China scare. That why should we be so concerned about that? Of course, the U.S. Let me bring one other element of this that Rio Tinto makes. They make it another argument that's interesting to Europe. They say this is for Europe. They don't say, Rio Tinto doesn't say this is for the United States. They said this is for Europe, and they tell one of the arguments made that they say is Europe. You also need to watch out for the United States because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the investment that the United States is making in its critical raw materials, including lithium. And my understanding, again, not being any type of expert in any of this, but there was a rich discovery apparently in the state of Arkansas here recently in the United States of lithium. Excuse me. So Europe, this is about you. You just put the Draghi report out, call to action. Europe has to take care of itself, and I'm sure there are many Serbian citizens who, when it comes to the question of China, and I think we heard a comment about this, would disagree maybe with that comment. They would say, no, we are not impressed with China's record here in Serbia when it comes to environment, and for all our doubts about Rio Tinto, you know what? We would feel better if someone has to mine this commodity. If that's actually going to happen, you know what? We would rather have this British-Australian entity, which at least will have some accountability for than what we have seen with China. So that's my opening to you, Professor Krstić. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Joseph. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I just have two initial disclaimers. The first one is that unfortunately, despite the fact that it was planned, my students are well, almost certainly not following this discussion from the faculty building, because my faculty building is blocked by students. And that is an interesting development of events, and it has nothing to do with lithium. It's basically a blockade which is initiated by students because of the recent events and the tragedy in Novi Sad. They demand responsibility for those events, and also they demand responsibility for the attacks on the students of Faculty of Drama Arts, which occurred a couple of weeks ago after the students of the Faculty of Drama Arts actually initiated protests, peaceful protests, obviously, with the same demands. So my students are responding to the social reality that we live in, and they blocked the faculty building. Unfortunately, they're not even letting us faculty teaching staff to get in, but I've heard that they will change their decision regarding the complete blockade, and that they will let the faculty to get into their office. Obviously, the lectures will not occur in the coming period, but I know that a group of my students are actually following this on YouTube from their homes, or from maybe even from university, but not from the classroom, because we don't have any kind of lectures yet. So to come back to the second disclaimer, I'm not an expert in this topic, so I would like to underline and to emphasize this. So I can give only, and that's a thing that I already emphasized in initial discussion with Mate and with Professor Joseph. So I can unfortunately only give the broad overview of the context, and I think that we had already an opportunity to hear much details about everything. So I will just focus on like the broader context, and to start with the issue of the geopolitical dimension and with the United States interest in it. I mean, I didn't plan to start with it, but considering that that was Bojana's question, and that you, Edward, started already with answering that question, yeah, I really think that that was the priority of the Biden's administration. It will probably be the priority of Trump's administration, almost certainly again, to somehow contain the rising influence of Russia and China. And I think that generally speaking, critical raw materials and energy sector are two fields in which this is perceived as the most important. And I think that the Serbian government is actually quite willing to offer something in return to the Western partners in some sort of hedging or balancing in foreign policy in these two sectors. For example, diversification of energy resources and the import of natural gas from Russia. We are now importing from Azerbaijan as well. We are still mostly dependent on Russia, but the amount of natural gas imported from Azerbaijan is rising. Also, the strategic partnership, it's actually not partnership, it's strategic cooperation contract, which was signed with the United States of America, which basically envisions cooperation in many aspects of development of Serbian energy infrastructure. Together with this mining project, I think that those are actually the areas in which United States perceives, as you have emphasized, that if we increase cooperation, I mean, if United States increases cooperation with Serbia in this domain, that in the long term, that will anchor Serbia to the West. When it comes to the European Union, I don't think basically that is completely correct, but I'm just trying to make an argument, to present arguments of all of the sides. To come to the most important actor, which you have also emphasized, and that is the European Union. Well, basically, the European Union is aiming to establish a strategic autonomy when it comes to critical raw materials. And already in 2020, the von der Leyen Commission actually proposed that EU industrial strategy should have a geopolitical dimension, which would seek to get some sort of strategic autonomy. And I think that this was further emphasized with the two additional events that occurred in 2020 and 2022, and that was COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent Russian invasion on Ukraine. So after these two events, I think that basically, as the EU itself said, it altered the dynamics of openness and economic integration, and it somehow directed the European Union towards looking to a more solidified and more autonomous economic perspective, which is basically some sort of basis for a geopolitical agency of the European Union as perceived in this doctrine. Together with some other trends like the resovereignization trend in United States, which is basically actively pursuing industrial policy after decades. So that started with Trump, that continued with Biden, and resovereignization in many areas, like with CHIPS project, for example, and so on and so forth. So there was a spillover of this broader trend to the European Union as well, and to the strategic thinking of the European Union. And when we add the Chinese influence and the competition with China, as one important aspect of the geopolitical thinking of the European Union in this region, and we take into account that China has a number of important projects, like, for example, in Hungary, when it comes to production of electronic vehicles, batteries, and so on and so forth. I think that basically this is the reason why the EU decided to adopt a specially tailored approach towards this region, which would focus on the extraction of critical raw materials as well. And that is one of the two pillars of the EU's approach to this issue. So they're trying to have a bilateral agreements with a number of states. As much as I know, there are 13 of them so far, in which they're trying to form some sort of strategic partnerships with third countries outside of the European Union. And these issues were already discussed in the previous session, so I will not waste any more time on that. But obviously, I think that a number of actors in the EU, number of political decision makers and analysts are aware that this might be potentially harmful for another important dimension of the EU power, and that is the normative power, because the EU has never been perceived as a military giant. It was perceived as economic or normative giant, but mostly military as a verb. Obviously, if you want to think geopolitically, you have to take into account all of the instruments, but that doesn't mean that you should rule out the normative dimension completely. So the EU, I think tried somehow to balance and to put the spotlight on the introduction of the EU digital battery passport, for example, then the directive on corporate sustainability due diligence from July this year, then the European Critical Raw Materials Act, and so on, which was previously introduced, and so on and so forth. I'm not an expert, I'm not a legal expert, and Mirko and Bojana already had their take on the efficiency of these acts, but I'm only trying to assess these announcements of these acts as some sort of balancing approach, balancing instrument in which the European Union aims to show to the public in this region that it still cares about the environmental effects and all other possible negative spillovers of the projects that it supports. And it obviously supports strongly the implementation of the project Jadar. And to come to the main point, and I will try to finish in a couple of minutes because I know that we are already running ahead of our schedule. So the EU is very interesting, obviously, in mining of Serbian lithium, and it's also interested that not only in mining, but that the Western companies do that, obviously. The signing of the MOU with Prime Minister Scholz when he visited Belgrade, after a long period of, cold relations between Belgrade and Berlin, that was a clear sign that this is important asset in relations between Serbia and at least certain EU countries, especially Germany, considering the already mentioned crisis in automotive industry and the production of cars in Germany, which is facing substantial hurdles at this moment. So obviously this is an asset. However, that does not mean that it will remain an asset geopolitically and foreign policy wise, because there are a couple of political developments which might maybe reduce the importance of this issue in the future. First of all, we have to see what will be with the German internal political dynamics in the shorter term, and also what will be Trump's policy. We can predict, but we are not 100% certain at this moment. Also, I think that it's important to draw on what Aleksandar has mentioned, this competition between recyclable powers and former mining colonies inside the EU regarding the concept, how to ensure the autonomy in this area. I think that is also something that might influence the geopolitical importance of this project in broader European context, as well as the technological development in the future. However, just to finish, so I do think that this is something that could be a geopolitical asset for Serbia, but I do not argue in favor of using it. So that's not my point. I only am trying to narrow down on what can you do in foreign policy area without taking into account all of the mentioned risks in other areas. So I'm not proposing the implementation. I'm only focusing on this particular area. However, when it comes to the policy proposals, basically Serbia has now, I think, three choices. The first one is to disregard completely this opportunity in the project, at least at this moment, due to all of the mentioned environmental, legal, political, societal, and other challenges which might occur. The second one is to try to negotiate the implementation of the project, and probably to aim to minimize the potential hazards, if it is possible at all, or to establish mechanisms of monitoring of its implementation, while parallelly probably trying to use it as a bargaining chip regarding other Serbian foreign policy interests, such as, for example, to get more EU attention for the protection of Serbs in Kosovo, or for the pursuance of Belgrade's interest in the dialogue with Pristina, and so on and so forth, or to accelerate the Serbian accession to the EU. So that might be one of the approaches, so to minimize the risks and to try to maximize national interest on the foreign stage. And there is a third possible approach, and that is to use this as a concession to the EU in order to get, to get the EU to turn the blind eye on internal problems, on the decay of democracy, on problems in human rights areas, on the growing corruption in Serbia, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, I'm very afraid that this third possibility is one of the most probable outcomes, and that is the worst outcome for citizens of Serbia. And I'll stop here. So if you have, I do not say that, I mean, I cannot predict, because that is something that will happen in the future. But let's say that based on various aspects of Serbian foreign and domestic politics and policy in previous years, I have serious doubts that this third possibility might be the outcome. And that's the worst possibility for Serbia. So I'll stop here, and I'm open for all of your questions.
Great. Milan, thank you very much for that. For someone who proclaims he's not an expert, that was an expert briefing, and very clear and cogent. And I could only reinforce the concern about the turning the blind eye. In fact, I think that characterizes the past 4 years of the U.S. approach, certainly, for the two reasons I mentioned, the two commodities there, the lithium being one and the Serbian ammunition being the other. So it's very much been the blind eye. And you all know that, I think, a lot better than I do, and those of us who are here in the United States. So that's, I think that's a completely valid concern as we anticipate a new administration coming in there. Mindful of the time here, what I would like to do is offer our two SAIS student discussants, Mate here next to me and Kaya in Slovenia, a chance to pose any remaining questions to the panel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much, all of you, for speaking. I think it was extremely insightful from various different avenues of looking at this problem, from environmental, legal, geopolitical, and economic views. I think they're all very relevant. My question might be more specific to Milan and Aleksandar, but please, anybody else that has any sort of idea or comment on it, please feel free to enter. My question is more relevant to industrial policy and future decoupling and what that might look like under the Trump administration. And specifically, looking into how the CHIPS Act has restricted certain chips manufacturing equipment to be sent to China. We are seeing just yesterday in the news, the Chinese have banned rare minerals exports to the United States for chip manufacturing. So as we see this in industrial policy in the future, in the next 4 years, specifically under Trump, who is very pro-tariff and domestic manufacturing, do you think that in terms of Serbia and Serbian lithium, which can also be used for chips in a broader sense, do you think there will be a sort of more Western pressure or more pressure to choose a side in that sense? Or will Serbia be able to kind of be in this limbo of still kind of continuing its policy that it's been kind of on all sides, neutral, open to anybody who would like to answer?
Great. Mate, Kaya, do you have a final question for our panel?
I do. It's more from the environmental legal perspective. I know we touched upon the environmental impacts, but I wanted to ask, and this goes for anyone, about this topic called intergenerational equity. I know this project causes, and people talk about, a lot of immediate impacts on the environment, but I just want to hear your opinions about the impacts of the Jadar project on future generations, and what impact that will have in regards to leaving those generations with the cleanup and the lack of resources, and potential soil degradation and water contamination, and just in general how that will not only impact the generations today, but in the future as well.
Great. Kaya, so with those two questions, intergenerational equity and the question of industrial policy, let me turn it back to our panel and say, any of you can begin to answer, and feel free to make any closing remarks that you like. Please, anyone who would like to address either of those. Aleksandar?
Yeah, okay. Well, basically, I'll begin regarding the tariffs. I think basically it's on everybody's lips, right? So, should Donald Trump, as he says, he's a tariff man, so to quote him, introduce like a blanket, basically, tariffs all across the board regarding imports, especially from Europe? Well, some calculations suggest it might impact the German economy by, contracting it by 1% GDP. And the German economy hasn't been, doing all that good recently. It's been, seeing zero growth basically in a number of sectors, and especially the auto sector has, been seeing the declining sales and profitability in exports in the last, 10 years basically. Not to mention scandals regarding the CO2 emissions and whatnot. And basically, I know there have been some discussions in Germany regarding subsidizing the sector, but that was even before Trump's tariffs. And basically, I think that all of these economies are linked to Serbia, and should the project continue, and I mean the Serbian one, the other project, basically, in this sort of economic reality, in this sort of economic environment, well, basically, we might see, as I mentioned, I think in my presentation, a fall in demand for Serbian lithium. And I know that in Brandenburg, Berlin, for example, there's this Tesla factory. I visited it personally as well. And if that factory decide to use Serbian lithium, and like these Tesla cars are actually export-oriented vehicles, well, that can actually impact this lithium from Serbia if this connection is established. So, in short, if Trump goes the way he intends to go, well, basically that will end up by reducing the lithium demand for Serbia, and thereby again making the mine quite superfluous, as I mentioned. And I think that's just like the way it's gonna go probably. And I don't think that neither the Serbian government nor Rio Tinto, perhaps even Rio Tinto is more prepared than the Serbian government, but definitely the Serbian government is not prepared for this scenario. And, if they chose to listen to experts like these here, in the panel, I think they would have actually, been more prepared to protect their own country, their own state from, negative economic impacts for the Trump administration. which might follow. And that's just not happening. Regarding intergenerational equity, I don't think there are studies, nor have I done studies on that regard, but definitely I can envision a future in which Serbia and the region become more polluted, definitely, making it harder for people to live, meaning, investments into clean air technologies, basically air purifiers in your homes. I know that according to recent studies, the region is I'll finish now. The region is basically more prone to climate change. We had heat waves, so all of that is compounded basically, and will be compounded by lithium extraction, making the region, the future of Serbia is basically, lithium mining. If the worst case scenario, if it goes through, lithium mining and heat, while the core countries will behave completely, different economic and environmental climate. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aleksandar.
I would like to continue with this question of intergeneration assessment. It sounds interesting, but to ask such a question in a country where we have environmental impact assessment study for projects which are already developed is a bit of futuristic. Formally in environmental impact assessment procedure, we have the requirement actually project developers have requirement to analyze short-term and long-term impacts. It means that even the impacts on future generation, having in mind that Professor Stevanović said the project will last for 70 years. So let's look at this issue like this. Let's back 70 years in a history. It was 1915, the time when Europe established the community of coal and steel. You remember that the coal and steel was the coal was main resource in Europe, the most important resource. So imagine what could happen in next 70 years. I'm not expert to assess the future of development to exploitation of critical minerals. But if I believe that it is possible that the lithium requirements will not be as high as they are now, or even something many different may happen in the electrification and green transition. So this is something which is not, from my point of view, is not taken into account in Serbia at all. Also, it is important to know that in Serbian law, the concept of life cycle assessment as a part of environmental impact assessment is undeveloped. Also, the concept of environmental and social impact assessment is not developed. We have formally required to analyze impact on society, but in practice, we don't have from the side of authority, we don't have those people competent to analyze such kind of like life cycle assessment, assess social assessment or intergenerational assessment. I wouldn't say that we don't have experts, because I witnessed that we in Serbia have experts with capacity to cope with challenge of this project like this. But those experts, unfortunately, are not working in Ministry of Environment or with Ministry, or fortunately, they are not.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mirko and Bojana, please.
Yeah, there's two elements that I really wanted to sort of address with this intergenerational equity, as you called it, which I found really interesting, commodifying kind of generations of us, into the future. It's very interesting to have to sort of speak in those terms, and it's something that I wish that someone from the local village was here. No one speaks English over there, so unfortunately, it's kind of me. But it is interesting having to, if someone was here, imagine forcing Zlatko Kokanović, father of 5, dairy farmer, to have to speak about intergenerational equity. He's an 8th generation farmer because he just wants to keep clean water and clean air and clean soil on his farm. It's quite it's quite demeaning. It's a really, from a social aspect, it's a really, the fact that we've gotten this far with extractivism and colonialism in the extractivist sense is a quite demeaning thing, I think, for farmers and local people. I find it demeaning myself, but I can have these conversations without kind of, getting too emotional about it. So I really wanted to address that, even just as a concept, is a huge problem that we're discussing it in that way. And I really appreciate that you asked the question that you worded it in that way. There's problems with right to housing and right to food here, and I don't want to get into those rights and things like that, but there's definitely, we just filed a complaint against strategic status, and we wrote about that in there. But also, I just want to turn to Papua New Guinea and, the fact that Rio Tinto is currently and has been for years in a lawsuit with 156 landowners in Papua New Guinea, who are still 40, 50 years later suffering the consequences of a copper mine over there that instigated a civil war because there's toxins in the water. And back then they also said that they would use the best technology, and they also said that they would implement environmental standards. It was the most basic of environmental standards. It wasn't even as complicated as they're promising here, and they still couldn't do it because they're a mining company and corruption is endemic to mining. What are we talking about? So just wanted to blast a little bit of realism into this conversation, because I understand that, from our perspective, it feels complex, but I don't think it is that complex. It's a mine, and we just do not want to mine on green fertile land, period. Done.
Very clear.
Thank you.
Very clear. And I'll close here to ask Milan or Zoran, any final comments before we close our program today?
Yeah, I would just want to say a couple of words similar to topic which Mirko and Bojana did it. So about the generation. So I belong to the generation which is in fact study engineering, and we were in a position that we learned how engineers could change the nature. That was our time, There's so many dams are built, so many mines are open in a socialist country of Yugoslavia, and it was a big progress. And pollutants and pollution was a normal consequence of all this industrialization after the Second World War. But now, not only in our country, but in entire Europe, let's say 20, 30 years ago, it started a big environmental changes, and the legislation adopted in a European Union. In most of the country, I could use the example of the Kajas country, Slovenia, where all mines were closed. And not only in Slovenia, many other European countries. And as a consequence, or if they are operating somehow in a let's say a small extent, they were mining in a closing operation. They put such a title. After all these 20, 30 years, all European countries found themselves that they are heavily depend on the import from the East. They say from the East. And I was participating in a couple of geological projects, which the title was, "We are so easily lost our minerals and our industrialization, and we heavily depend from the East." So we should find the way how to go out from this situation. And this is how I see that also it's quite logical that Europe are looking for exit, and to look for some places like Serbia, where they could make a mining and operation, which will result with a new critical minerals. But let's look from our perspective. If such a mining would pollute our major water resource, generation will come, we will remember us as a devastator of the country. That was our position at the moment. So we have to try to find a balance. At the moment, Jadar project is, from our perspective, is not anymore feasible because of so many accidents could happen and could heavily damage our water resources, nature, fertile land, and also the farming community, local farming community. So for the moment, Jadar should not be implemented due to these several factors. Thank you again for your for opportunity for us to expose our opinions about all these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Stevanović, and for that call, basically for a generational responsibility or a generational obligation to the future. I take note of that. And Professor Krstić, you have the final say here. And let me note here, understand your students are not physically there at the university. Maybe some are watching and others are protesting. And just to say how sorry I was to hear about the tragedy last month in Novi Sad that took the lives, I believe, of 15, if I'm correct, 15 of your fellow citizens. And we understand the sentiment among the population there. Milan, please, you have the floor for any closing remarks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your support. As well, basically, as I said, that students are probably protesting, and that not a big number of them are attending this online conference. I got mostly from master students, because obviously bachelor students are more engaged in protesting acts, and master students are, well, they are older and some of them work, so they obviously have lectures usually in the afternoon, and a number of them are attending this panel. So I apologize to all of them that messaged me in the meantime and letting me know that I'm wrong when I said that there are not too many students that are following this. So just to briefly comment on what you have mentioned, when it comes to the generational responsibility, I do not want to give any kind of response on that, but there is one interesting phenomenon which is more like individual, or I do not want to make any kind of, well, bigger kind of it's more just an anecdote. I have a couple of friends from town of Leposavić, North Kosovo, which are, well, they're strongly anti-Vučić oriented or anti-government oriented. They're also quite pro-Serb patriots, as I mean, almost a lot of Serbs from Kosovo are, but they're also strong in favor of this mining project. And one of the arguments that they quite often use is that basically their families grew up in mining region, and that Trepča, the biggest mine in North Kosovo, was feeding their families. So it would be interesting to see if there is a geographical difference among people who are advocating in favor of against. I really do not make any kind of conclusion that there is. This is more like inductive experience, but it was only interesting for me from the point of view of anecdote, because it doesn't correspond to any of those patterns that who supports Vučić would support the mine, or who is in favor of, I don't know, pro-Western orientation would support, and so on and so forth. Just to say briefly, to comment on what Mate said, when it comes to the future Trump's policy towards Serbia and Serbian engagement with China, I think that there will be a pressure to stop deepening the cooperation, but I don't think that basically Trump's administration would require from Serbia to cut the existing ties, because I think that that would also require from United States to have similar pressure on Hungary and Viktor Orban, and it seems to me that Viktor Orban is one of the most favorite politicians from Europe to President Trump, president-elect at this moment. He was the only foreign statesman that was mentioned in the debate in Philadelphia. Obviously, Hungary is in the EU, so it has much tougher and better geopolitical position than Serbia, but there is sort of ideological leaning of President Vučić towards positions of President Orban, so that might be appealing to President Trump as well. To conclude, I don't think that there will be a pressure to cut ties, but there will be a pressure on Serbia coming from Trump's administration to engage in future projects, mostly with the United States, even not mostly with the EU and the West, but mostly with the United States.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Milan. And as we bring this to a close, let me just say a couple points here before I express our thanks to all of our outstanding panelists here today. First is this exceptional, serious conversation will be available for anyone to see. This is taped. It will be available on YouTube, and it will also be available on the Johns Hopkins SAIS FPI, that's Foreign Policy Institute, FPI, Foreign Policy Institute website. So it'll be posted there as well as on YouTube. So anyone can see this and refer to this highly substantive and serious discussion on an incredibly important, compelling topic. And I want to say again that we're sorry that we did not have voices from official Serbian voices from this, that is from the Serbian government, or that, again, understanding that the invitation came late, was sent late to Rio Tinto, that we did not have. Rio Tinto, again, out of fairness, I point our viewers to go to the Rio Tinto website, riotintoserbia.com, and you can see their side of the story. But I have to say this, our aim was fulfilled, and I really appreciate our, again, all five of our speakers today. Our aim was educational, and I believe that anyone who wanted to learn objectively about what are the concerns about the Jadar project, again, in the face of significant potential benefits, what are the concerns, heard that today. I didn't hear anything that remotely resembled disinformation. I didn't hear anything, no, not a word. I heard serious, substantive concerns. Again, there could be another side to that. There can be responses to that, but I didn't hear anything remotely unserious. Instead, this was directly to the point. You answered all of our additional questions, and for that, I want to thank all of you. Here I'm reading it on my screen: Milan Krstić, Aleksandar Matković, Zoran Stevanović, Bojana Novaković, and Mirko Popović. I want to thank each of you on behalf of Mate Sekulić and Kaya Buria and FPI Program Coordinator Brian Kessler. I want to thank all of you for your time and for sharing your expertise and your interest and commitment on this topic, and your commitment as Serbian citizens, and if you'll allow me to say, as Serbian patriots, the concerns about your country and its future, if you'll allow me to say that. I'm Edward Joseph, signing off here from Johns Hopkins SAIS Bloomberg Center here in Washington. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much and hvala najlepše.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hvala.
Bye.
Hvala najlepše. Ciao. Doviđenja.
Živjeli svi.
Oh, do we leave now? Yes.
Live stream is over.